disruptive journalism, I think, is kind of the point of journalism. That's what so much great journalism is. It's about challenging the status quo, holding people to account. And that's kind of what we are trying to do at the moment. The World Health Organization has said that the world is fighting not one, but two wars right now. The first is against the pandemic. And this is not a war that I can contribute much to. I have no medical skills, but I'm very grateful to the doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals who are on the front lines. But as a journalist, I find myself on the front lines of that second war, which the WHO calls an infodemic. Now, an infodemic just means that there is so much information on our TVs and phones and computers that we are overwhelmed, that ordinary consumers of news, ordinary people have no idea how to sort the real from the fake, the true from the false. Who can we rely on? Who do we trust? How do we get reliable information? So today I want to talk to you about what it's like being on the front lines of the infodemic. A little bit of background. I work for the Mail and Guardian newspaper, which is an independent newspaper in South Africa that was founded several decades ago to challenge the propaganda of the apartheid regime. We are widely read across the African continent and put a lot of emphasis and resources into covering continental news properly. But as the scale of the pandemic became apparent, we started to get a little bit worried because we also started to see a huge increase in the amount of fake news and disinformation doing the rounds. The thing that worried us the most was just even talking to our friends and family members who are all, smart, well-educated people that we love, but they kept asking us ridiculous questions. Simon, does 5G really cause corona? Simon, was the virus made in a lab in China? Simon, I heard that taking a really hot bath kills the germs, so I'm just going to do that and I'll be fine. When I responded to these questions, the first thing I would ask is, where did they get this information from? And the answer was always the same. Oh, someone forwarded it to me on WhatsApp. And that's when we kind of had our big realization. For most people in South Africa, and this is true for many other African countries, WhatsApp has become the primary means of communicating information. For us, WhatsApp is the front line of the infodemic. And you know what? No major media organization has any formal presence on WhatsApp. If this really is a war, then we're not even on the same battlefield as our enemy. There's a huge potential audience out there. They're stuck in lockdown, they're on their phones, they're desperate for reliable information, and we're not meeting that audience where they are. And we had to find a way to fix this. So about a month ago, some colleagues and I hatched a plan. Now, I wish that we could claim credit for it, but the plan was not entirely original. There is a Zimbabwean news organization called 263 Chat, run by a media visionary called Nigel Mugamu. And 263 started as a news website, which it still is, but a couple of years ago, Nigel had this really brilliant idea to package up his news into a PDF and distribute that PDF via WhatsApp. It was a genius thing. It was a masterstroke. He already had the news. He just got someone to lay it all out nicely, and then they could send it to these networks. Very soon, they had tens of thousands of subscribers, and then you could take that to advertisers who would pay to advertise in the PDF edition. So we decided to follow in the footsteps of 263 Chat. What we did is we've created a brand new publication to house all of our Pan-African content. Now, we've called this thing The Continent, and we describe it as a newspaper, but it's not a traditional newspaper. It's not printed. There's no website. What it is a PDF that looks and feels like a newspaper. I've asked Nizam to send around the link on the group. You can download the latest edition for free and have a look for yourself, see what it looks like. If you read it on a laptop, it's going to look a bit strange because it is optimized for WhatsApp to be read on a phone. And what you'll see is it really has the feel of a newspaper. It's also got the quality standards of a high-end product, both in the writing and in the design. And this was really important for us because that's quite difficult to mimic. Most fake news looks and sounds kind of amateurish. The quality of our design and writing is a big part of how we can convince our audience to trust us. But the most obvious benefit of this model is distribution. Most countries are on lockdown. You can't cart around physical newspapers. People can't access physical newspapers. People also struggle to access websites in many African countries because data is expensive. Whereas WhatsApp on many cell phone providers has a sort of zero rated service or is comparatively much cheaper. So when we are printing this newspaper, as we say, there are no distribution costs. It's almost entirely free. And that means that this thing can travel far and wide. Within a week of our launch, and we had no advertising with the exception of a couple of tweets, we had built up a database, a subscriber database of a few thousand people. Now, just think of the exponential power of this network. We send our edition to a few thousand people. Each of those people forwarded on to a few of their friends or a few of their WhatsApp groups. Each of the people that receive it there forwarded to a few more. Suddenly you're talking about audiences in the tens of thousands of people, perhaps hundreds of thousands. It can also be passed between cities and across borders in seconds. The response has been extraordinary. We are only on our third issue. So it took sort of 2 weeks from conceptualization to the first issue. We've now just published our third issue yesterday. We've had people all over the world getting in touch with us to sign up. Many of our sort of friends and contacts have told us that they received the publication via other friends and WhatsApp groups. So the sort of exponential thing is working, that those viral networks are coming into effect. Donors have been in touch, they're interested. The BBC World Service has been in touch. They want to know how we're doing this. And I know for a fact that several Kenyan media houses are planning to copy us, which we strongly encourage. We think that all the interest is because this is, or it has the potential to be, a genuinely disruptive model for the journalism business. It's already disrupting the space because it's getting into places that we couldn't get into before, places where journalism and quality journalism is hard to find. For example, our cover story last week was about the African governments, and there are not that many of them, but there are a few who are really failing to take the coronavirus seriously and are really messing up the response. Now, I heard this week that at least one country had complained to an international institution about being singled out in our story. Now, why were they moved to complain about that particular story? Not because of the news itself, which has been widely reported elsewhere, but I think because of the format. Because this was a PDF newspaper, it was something that citizens can easily share, can easily read, can easily distribute, and governments can't really do anything about it. There's no print run that can be halted. There are no websites that can be put on some kind of block list. It is citizens sharing information between themselves on an encrypted platform that governments cannot access. But the difference, I mean, this is exactly what fake news does. But the difference is that this is genuine, reliable news that has been specifically designed for this particular platform. You know, the World Health Organization is totally right. This is an infodemic. And we, as journalists who are on the front line, we have to do things differently, because if we don't, the consequences of not having reliable news are so potentially devastating that it's hard to even countenance them. So we have to be doing something differently to reach more people with credible, reliable news. And this is our effort to make that happen.